This is Katie Hagemeyer, and I am presenting about tort liability. So, tort is an actionable or civil wrong committed against one person by another, and that's an independent of contract. So, in schools, a tort can be involved with multiple people, school personnel, or it could just be a single employee. Intentional tort is a deliberate act committed against another person. It can be malice or it may not be malice. Most of intentional tort is assault, battery, false imprisonment, trespass to personal property. Unintentional tort is negligence. So wrong by someone who fails to exercise that degree of care in doing what is otherwise permissible. There's 4 questions that need to be addressed when talking about negligence. Does the teacher owe a duty to the student? Did the teacher breach that duty? Was the teacher's failure to fulfill her or his duty the cause of the student's injury? And did an injury actually occur? So the first case that I read about was Mosley versus the Portland Public School District. And this was a student who was attending class at a high school, and during lunch she got into a fight with another student, and that student proceeded to pull a knife on her and stabbed her multiple times. And doing that caused her permanent scarring on her face and chest because of the stab wounds. So that student sued, and her parents sued for negligence, arguing that the school didn't provide proper supervision and they didn't stop the fight before the knife was involved. This school did have school security on site and supervision. There was just no one in that area at the time. The Oregon Supreme Court ruled in favor of the district in this particular case. If this occurred in our school district, I think a reactive would be obviously to make sure there are policies and procedures in place for supervising lunch and hallway, and maybe increasing the amount of security in those areas. Proactive would be that there already are sound and secure procedures and expectations in place from the beginning of this school year. And that's teacher accountability. I think having a professional code of ethics would be that teacher accountability for making sure they're following their supervisory duties. The next case was Johnson versus the School District of Millard. This was a first grade student in music class that got injured. That particular day, the music teacher was teaching the class how to play London Bridge, is falling down, and she taught them the rules, explained it, showed them how to do it, and then let them play on their own. And she was either working with another student or had her back turned, and this particular student got swung very, very hard by his classmates and ended up in the bookcase with 50 stitches above his right eye, which caused him to have blurred vision for a while and then headaches for quite a while. The court ruled that it was negligent supervision and that they needed to award monumental money. The district appealed, but the Supreme Court of Nebraska went ahead and affirmed the trial court's decision. Reactive measures is just if an incident like that happened, London Bridge would not be allowed to be played at school anymore, or games similar to that. I think this could go back to, I'm sure, cases with dodgeball and supervision. Just if you're going to do that, the teacher can't leave the classroom or have their back turned. There has to be strict supervision if there's going to be games like that played. Proactive measures, yearly training on supervision and proximity in the classroom, especially when playing games like that. And then again, having those professional code of ethics to ensure the safety and hold teachers accountable. The third case was a male student attending a middle school in Des Moines, Iowa. He was beaten up by another student in the hallway. There's no supervision. The student and his parents sued the Des Moines School District, arguing there's a lack of supervision, and the particular student that beat him up has multiple violent acts on his record, and the parents and the student think that there should have been a warning to potential victims of the student who attacked him of his violent nature. The jury found that the school was negligent, but it wasn't proximate cause of the injuries, but the Supreme Court reversed and remanded that. Reactive measures. Again, it's just making sure there's policies and procedures in place for hallway supervision and making sure teachers are being held accountable to those supervisory roles. That particular student probably needs to be put on an intervention plan to get some supports in place for him to be successful and help with his violent acts and physical altercations. Proactive measures, again, having everything in place from the beginning of the year, not doing it after the fact or after there are incidents, just having that proactive mindset and having things in place ahead of time. The next case, this was a 15-year-old girl that traveled to China for a school-sponsored trip during the summer. And during that trip, she was bitten by a tick and was transmitted a disease to that tick that caused her neurological damage and left her permanently unable to speak. So her parents sued the school district, saying they were negligent for not warning them that the trip might bring her into contact with disease-bearing insects, that they could have taken protective measures such as insect repellent, proper clothing to wear in forested areas, and checking for ticks. The jury awarded in favor of the family and that the district was negligent. Reactive measures, so after the fact, any future field trips, whether they're in the country or out, making sure there's a handout sent home, sharing the possible risk, precautions, what appropriate clothing, etc. Proactive measures, make sure there's a field trip policy in place in your school and school district. Make sure there's permission slips that are being signed. Informative information that needs to be sent home ahead of time. All should be part of the policy, either by the school itself and the principal or the school district. And the last case was a kindergarten boy who was super excited and made a gift for his mom for Mother's Day and was running to give it to his mom, and he tripped and fell and landed on a clump of pine shrubs, and some of those sticks poked him and penetrated him in the eye and ended up jabbing his frontal lobe of his brain. The district was found negligent because those paths it was a foreseeable hazard, and the stumps remained on the playground in a high trafficked area. So the court ruled in favor of the family. So again, that's just making sure safety, making sure school grounds, playgrounds, any hazards within the school are taken care of and reported to maintenance to be cleared or cleaned up, and not just leaving them, because in this case it cost the district and that student. So reactive would be making sure removing all of those stumps, making sure there's no hazardous, but that should be a proactive measure and should be done ahead of time. Making sure playground equipment, this happened at our school, but we had some playground equipment that was falling apart and dangerous. And it got reported immediately and fixed, and the students were not allowed to play on that particular piece of equipment until it got fixed. So just being proactive about those types of situations. That's the end of my presentation. I think it's really important to understand tort law and tort cases, negligence, and being proactive. I think being proactive prevents cases like these from happening.